from this. Yo, what's up, world? Splat, 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 splat! We're throwing eggs! It's so
What's
yucky!
up, guys? Oh, my God. I love it. Sounds like a Nickelodeon.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, man. What's up, Lance?
I'm good, Dan. How about yourself?
Good. I just woke up from a nap, so you'll have to be the legs for today's entertainment.
I can do that. I can do that.
Somehow, I don't think it'll be a problem. Also, I think I'll wake up here in a bit. So you just make sure that you're good for the first leg, and I'll get my engines running.
Yeah, you'll chime in at some point.
Yeah.
So that's
exactly
good. Nice. So how'd that? You were telling me earlier that the couch is stuck in the storage unit right now. You can't flip it.
Yeah, I bought this couch because I wanted to. It was a really nice couch, and I lowballed the hell out of them. So I was like, I could just flip this couch real easy. So I rented a cheap U-Haul. I rented a cheap storage unit, and just went and got this crazy couch.
Getting that hustle.
And hustling, man. So I'm like, okay, that's awesome. I'll start tomorrow. And it rains the next day. I'm like, you know what? Whatever. I'll just take a day off. No one's going to want to look at the couch in the rain anyway. I'll just take a day off.
Creepy storage unit while it's wet outside. Yeah.
Exactly. So next day I go out to the parking lot. My car doesn't start. I'm like, so dead battery, and it's not even. It won't even take a jump. So I have to get it towed to the place. I'm like, man, okay, all right, that's fine, whatever.
Little double whammy.
Yep. And lo and behold, the next day,
they come in threes.
Like 6 or 7 inches of snow. And I'm just like, what the fruit basket, man? I'm gonna have to wait this out. This storage unit is just gonna have to hold this couch. I actually got 2 couches. They're going to hold these couches for a little while longer, and then I'm going to flip them. But lesson learned is this is not a game for a civilian, a person without a truck is what the lesson is.
You just got to find those smaller items and store them in your storage unit and then flip them that way. Turn it into like the eBay store. Exactly.
So I'm thinking, so follow me on this. I'm thinking just wooden furniture, like coffee tables, wood, like chairs, and iPhones and
what
iPads.
You really got to do is find things that need to get like fixed up just a little bit, and then call some of our buddies we know and be like, "Hey, come and teach me some stuff.
Come and teach me some stuff about some things, man."
Dude, I know that like we got some, restored furniture. And I'm guessing that they bought probably this stuff for like $200, and we're able to flip it for like $800 or $900. And they're great; they're beautiful pieces. And I'm just sitting there going, I could probably do this sort of close to how they did it if I had space. But I'm in an apartment. That's it.
That's the whole thing holding people back is space, which is why I rented this storage unit. That all the storage units around me have these like $1 first month specials. So. I'm hoping that I can flip the couch within a month.
So, or just call a buddy and be like, "Hey, I'll give you $10 to let me put these in your basement."
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. Don't plant any reefer in it. But yeah, it's cool. It's fun to kind of be like a little, just a little flipper, like it's like a business model that you just have to keep at it, and it's all of a sudden a random little business.
Yeah. So I made quite a little haul from just selling all of the ladies' shit. She had a full house before we left for the Peace Corps. She had an entire house and got rid of all the big pieces, but all the little stuff was still there. And that's been my job. I'm like, okay, here, made $50 today, made $100 today.
Nice.
Just trying to get rid of, and she had really nice, like high-end clothes, designer purses. And now she just looks and she's like, I don't want any of that. And so I'm trying to sell a bunch of that stuff right now. Actually, I only have one thing left.
That's a good business model too, man. If you so basically you just get married to someone with a house full of stuff.
And then downgrade.
And then downgrade.
Because you force her hand, right? or his hand.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Or their hand.
Or their hand. You force their hands. There you go. That's all inclusive.
Yeah, their hands. Their hands. Or if they don't identify as a human, if they're a furry,
hands.
If they're a furry, I think.
It's hands.
Some people identify as dogs, so.
Yeah.
But yeah, man, I'm loving it. Although I'm not downgrading, but downgrading in size. I'm gonna flip these couches. I'm not putting another couch in that storage unit. I'll throw some coffee tables in there maybe if I got some more time. But I'm just gonna do iPhones, man. I joined like an iPhone flipping Facebook group, and it's just, why not? Why
just
not?
Try it out, right?
Just try it out.
Online pyramid schemes. I dig it.
Yeah, exactly. Unfortunately, the very opposite of a pyramid scheme, but yes.
Yeah, just the scheme enough to get you involved. You're like, hey, you want to try to make some money?
Yeah, well, they're not really selling anything. It's just a decentralized group of people that flip iPhones. So yeah, it's flipping is essentially kind of like the everyman's game. It's kind of impossible to turn it into a pyramid scheme because there's so much like on hands work that you have to do.
I mean, the only one that I can think of would be like Goodwill. It's probably the ultimate flipping pyramid scheme. Come and give us your free crap, and then we'll turn around and sell it. And the dude who started it up straight up said, this isn't a nonprofit. Like, Goodwill is a for-profit company.
That's awesome.
And he's like, I'm just going to take your junk and make money off of it because you're too lazy to. And it's like, all right, cool, here, take it.
And so many people do that. You can't underestimate the amount of people that just want something out of their site. That's
we were
all they want.
talking about that last week. Just get it gone.
Get it gone.
Yeah, I've just been kicking it, working on some papers, learning about the different theological methods and beliefs or systems of Thomas Aquinas. It's been great. That's been my whole day today. Yeah. Yeah. It's good.
As you do. It sounds kind of casual, actually.
Yeah, just like a coffee table book. It's been fun.
Yeah. I love it.
No, it's cool because what I was just reading about sort of ties into, how you identify. It was it's sort of the I am, or I exist, therefore I am, or I am, therefore I exist. And which
the Descartes thing?
Yeah. Is it Descartes or is it Thomas, which has the I exist, therefore I am versus I am, therefore I exist. So which is it? Just as a little thought experiment. Wow,
that's fascinating. It's I would take the easy way out and say neither.
Yeah, I mean it's a combination of both.
Yeah.
Split the middle,
Split the middle like a piece of cake.
Just let's divide the checks,
Yeah.
Evenly. We don't have to itemize it, just even split.
Exactly. We're going Dutch here. But you were the one that had all the Dom Perignon. I had the celery sticks.
I told you when you came out, we were splitting the bill.
Oh, all right, Stephanie. Yeah, no, I know what you mean though. I think on one level, I think therefore I am makes more sense. Just because you create the reality around you and you exist in the context of the world. But on the other hand, I'm apt to say that if you zoom out into another paradigm, then I don't think that these physical structures necessarily take precedence when you zoom way out. And I think that, thinking in the English language, something we made up ourselves, it just doesn't hold water for me. So I think it's a good it definitely, I think that's a cop out though. So I'm going to go with my first answer.
Yeah. See, I'm leaning towards I exist as a human, therefore I think. Because a dog exists, a tree exists, the ocean exists, plenty of things exist and are then able, and we've risen to the level of consciousness, as opposed to our consciousness is what has created everything around us. My consciousness didn't create me.
Yeah.
I was created. And then from this creation came consciousness.
Okay. Yeah. I could see that
that's
too.
sort of
I
where
guess,
I'm going down right now. This was just today's thought.
Just today's thoughts. I see it more. I see that question as more of I think, therefore I am. Like, I think a dog thinks as well. I don't think that necessarily means a dog doesn't think. But I think our brains, in some ways, this is like the essential debate, right? Like, what is consciousness? Where does it come from? Because, some people say that consciousness is more, our brains are like a receiver, an antenna, and we receive a signal from outside of our brain. And what is a thought truly made up of? It is just a series of electrical signals, that sort of thing. So it comes down to a very trippy kind of like hyperloop almost, where they feed into themselves. So both of them kind of have their own threads that you can kind of find the end of and like go into the yarn ball with. So.
Yeah. And that's actually a pretty sweet transition, because I got a fun topic for us today. And it is about tripping in a way. It's actually a giant conspiracy theory. So that's what we're going to talk about.
Conspiracies.
Yeah.
All right. We're having a QAnon podcast.
Yeah. A little bit. No, not at all.
Okay. Good.
Yeah. Dude, have you heard of this book or documentary? It's a book, and then the guy who wrote the book also made a documentary. It's called Drugs as Weapons Used Against Us. No, I'm sorry, Drugs as Weapons Against Us. It's by this guy, John Potash. Cool dude, and he did this ridiculous investigation. I'm only going to talk about part of it because the book is massive and the documentary is crazy long as well. But I wanted to talk about Timothy Leary. You know him?
Yeah. Oh yeah, dude. The OG gangster of the psychedelic movement. And when I say gangster, he's a little bit annoying, actually. From my readings, he annoys me. But
oh yeah, no, he would have driven me crazy if I had seen him in person.
Well, because he's a proselytizer, basically. He would not shut up about LSD and kind of got it made illegal in a way. I'm not sure if this is in your conspiracy or not.
It goes down there a little bit. So anybody out there, Timothy Leary, was this guru in the 60s. His main phrase that he used to like get people on was turn on, tune in, drop out. That was
and that really freaked out the Republicans.
Well, it freaked him out. Nixon labeled him as the most dangerous man in America.
Yeah, so stupid.
But this is all, so this is where we're going to get to. We're going to get to Timothy Leary, but we're going to go back in time. Let's to the good old 1700s and the opium trade.
Nice.
Yeah, I thought you'd like this one. So, in the 1700s, we figured out, or we didn't figure out, a bunch of wealthy Brits and Americans figured out that opium was worth a ton of money. And they were going to what was known as the Golden Triangle. Primarily, this is Southeast Asia. There is a little spot in India, but Southeast Asia is like the ticket for where poppies grew. They were going in, getting the poppies, and cultivating opium out of it. Then they were going and selling it to the masses and making a shit ton of money. These were like 100 millionaires in the 1800s.
Nice.
The opium wars of like between 1839 and 1860, there were two of them. They're the reason why the UK had Hong Kong for so long. During the wars, China said, opium's bad. We don't want you to sell and trade opium any longer here. The wealthy aristocrats that were part of the British East India Company said, no, that's not allowed. Leveraged the crown to send in troops and started these opium wars. Opium wars went on. China got their ass kicked. And in exchange for ending the fight, Britain ordered China to give them all of their ports and also they could not ban the trade and distribution of opium within China, which devastated and crippled the economy for years and years. That's a brief history on the opium wars, this and that, but there's one important family name that comes out of the opium trade with the British East India Company, and that's the Russell family. The Russell family was a super wealthy family during the 1800s. They were the richest family in the US. And it was only because of opium sales. Again, this was millions and millions of dollars in the 1800s. The Russell family was up there with the Rockefellers, the Morgans, the Vanderbilts, Carnegie, all those big robber barons that we like to, complain about. The funny part about all of that is the Russell family, in a way, is what created the robber barons. J.P. Morgan's family married into the Russell family, and that's how they basically put all their wealth together. And so the robber barons made all of their money to start out with from the sale of opium. Pretty wild. And you're like, that makes sense.
Those motherfuckers were so corrupt. That makes sense to me.
Yeah. So they took all of this money, and then they decided to create elite organizations and sort of secret organizations. You have, like, from Yale, the Skull and Bones Society was the Morgan family. They're the ones that started that, funneled the money in. You had, the Carnegies, Vanderbilts, Rockefellers creating these institutions like Stanford, Harvard. Our Ivy Leagues were all their money for the most part, and they were building these groups. And from that, they created, like I said, these elite organizations and the secret societies that wanted to promote one thing, the Anglo-Saxon way of life, specifically the Anglo-Saxon, your favorite, eugenics.
It's not my favorite, guys. Not my favorite.
It's not. But they, from their money, with the arts, we think about like Carnegie Hall, we think about Rockefeller Square, and them being these pinnacle points of culture in the US. They created those institutions in order to promote the culture that they approved of and in order to control it. So they were essentially they were creating an internal ministry of culture, good old 1984 there, and trying to manipulate the way in which people had fun in order to control, everything else, every other part of their life, sort of like advertising. They basically were the OGs in, hey, check out this commercial. I mean, the Super Bowl is happening because of this, or just did, I guess. I don't know. Did you watch any of that by the chance?
Oh, totally.
Oh, I didn't see a single minute.
You're probably bitter because Brady beat you in the game beforehand.
Oh, I don't care. I didn't watch a single 5 minutes this entire season. I didn't know if you dropped out of it as well, but
no, I watched the Super Bowl. I just had a fun little quarantine Super Bowl, but yeah, man, I meant to say sorry for getting beat by Brady, but I guess hey. And
who did Brady beat?
Drew Brees.
Oh yeah, my doppelganger. Yeah. There you go.
Your doppelganger. Your lookalike. We got Drew Brees on the line here.
Yeah,
telling us about.
Come on, Drew, get your act together. You're Drew better Brees than that.
Telling us about conspiracy theories.
So, the robber baron families created, with the help of a bunch of other wealthy families, the eugenics records office in the U.S. in the early 1900s.
Whew, that sounds sketchy. The Nazis before the Nazis.
Mm-hmm. Essentially, and they were trying to just weed out basically the lower income classes. So if you were Black, Jewish, Irish, Catholic was another big thing, and there's one other group that I'm missing that were like the 5 main targets. I apologize to that 5th group.
Is it the gay folk?
I think that was just known. Like, it didn't matter. You could have been Anglo-Saxon and they would have still been like, get out of here.
Yeah.
But this was specifically based off of what you look like and your economic status. And it was called the War Against the Weak. There's this really cool book by a guy named Edwin Black. I went down a really big rabbit hole with this for like a week, so deal
Nice.
with me. And he highlights all of these issues. It's a cool book. I read the synopsis and like the free chapter that you get when you open things up. Well, this was all fine, fun and dandy, right? It's like, oh, okay, just like trying out eugenics, controlling the media, just, manipulating people how we wanted to in order to get, more money in our pockets and to have people just like us all the way around us. It was the main goal of, the 4 wealthiest families at the time.
They sound like a bunch of clowns.
Yeah.
Are we talking about the Rockefellers, the JP Morgan, the Henry Ford?
Ford wasn't part of it because he got his wealth post that.
Okay. Then what?
Alexander Bell was one. Stanford was one. Burbank was one. But the big 4 founders are Rockefellers, Morgans, Vanderbilts, and why am I blanking on one? I'm just gonna flip back to cheat. Carnegie's.
Those are the OG. That's the Industrial Revolution guys.
Yeah, those are the guys that got all their money from opium, created a bunch of businesses. From their opium money, were able to monopolize industries, cut down the trade of things, and then become the wealthiest people around.
Yeah, they're like wealthier than Musk and Bezos, I think, by today's standards.
Yeah, comparatively, yeah. You had 4 guys that had more wealth than both Musk and Bezos.
I think with counting inflation, I think these dudes were like up at the like 500 billion mark or something.
They had an insane amount of money.
Yeah.
And with this, they used it however they want it, like we sort of see today. But their weird, twisted, turn of the 20th century thing was if you're not, an Anglo-Saxon white dude, everything's wrong with you. And that seemed to be a prevailing thought that existed not just in the US. World War II happened. That was messed up. But they funneled all of this money in. And then after World War II, decided to also, and this is where we get into fun conspiracies, funnel their money into the creation of the CIA in order to create a government organization to control how Americans thought. It was a propaganda agency. The CIA was founded on billionaire money relative for the time in order to manipulate and control the American public. There's a cool it's called the Culture Cold War. It goes into that a little bit more. It's another fun book. And the wild part where we're going to get to Timothy Leary is under Operation Mockingbird. Have you heard of this one by chance?
No.
This is a cool one. And this was in a way, the part of the CIA that was in charge of the propaganda of the media and the arts. That was the focus. What do you want to control? You want to control the media and you want to control the arts. The songs that were being put out. At that point, the television and radio broadcasts, what people were listening to, what they were doing. And in Operation Mockingbird, oi! The dog's chewing a new blanket. They enrolled a bunch of people from another Operation Paperclip.
Paperclip.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Do you know this one?
I've heard of Paperclip. Yeah.
Yeah. Paperclip was a covert operation or an underground operation in a way that brought Nazi scientists to the U.S. and the government paid them and hid them.
NASA, right?
Huh? NASA, NASA had them. CIA had them. Basically, every government agency, if you were a top Nazi scientist and you could be used in that field, you were brought over, given a different name, or just told like, oh, they weren't part of the Nazi party and were given work and were paid by American taxpayers.
That's insane.
Yeah, that part
Those
actually,
bastards.
that's not a conspiracy theory. Paperclip is a real thing. That happened. Also, all of this has been put out by Senate documents. I'm not just going off of like a Wikipedia and like black hole search. The Senate Congress has released documents in the 1990s that says everything I'm saying right now. It's not new. It's just, it got buried because who wanted to watch C-SPAN when the Summer Olympics were going on? It's always they're always released at times where the public's distracted. But okay, so paperclip. Okay, so Mockingbird to control this all. Well, here we get to Timothy Leary and Project MK Ultra.
Yes, I've heard of this too.
That was all. Okay, so the history's there. So basically we had opium, really rich families funneling money to the CIA, controlling the culture, and now we're at Operation MK Ultra. It ran from 1953 and then was quote unquote closed down until 1964. But then records showed that the CIA continued the budget until 1973. So another 9 years. This would have been during the time of what was happening in the 60s?
The Beatles.
The Beatles. Yep. The Stones, Vietnam.
All of the like, the psychedelic revolution.
Mm-hmm. We also had, civil rights going on. The 60s were a busy time, super busy time. And there's a sort of a theme that goes along with, I think, Vietnam, civil rights, the Beatles, the Stones, Hendrix. There was a particular population that necessarily didn't like these things.
Hippies.
No, didn't like them. The hippies liked all of them. Well, didn't like Vietnam.
Richard Nixon.
Yes, Richard Nixon and the super rich white folks.
Yeah, the Republicans.
Mm-hmm. I won't say all Republicans because I can't, prove that, but it gets a little crazy. There's this old school artist and activist by the name of Paul Robinson Jr. He was an amazing musician. He spoke 13 or 14 languages, traveled around the world giving talks on the civil rights movements. This was in the late 50s. And he went to Russia one day and was invited over to this party. Randomly, there was a bunch of Americans in the room next to him at his hotel. And he's invited over and he has a drink and then all of a sudden realizes that something's wrong and he starts tripping out. He has basically a psychotic breakdown, and when he gets back home, gets back to the US, is trying to figure out what happens. He's talking around and he finds out that he had been dosed with acid. Later documents have shown that there were CIA operatives at that party.
Crazy.
So this is the first, in a way, dosing of a major political player in the leftist camp, or I would say the counterculture camp, which has this weird okay, CIA was there. Did they do it? What happened? Well, Robert Paulson Jr., unfortunately, his trip was so heavy that he was dosed with so much that it destroyed his brain. And he went through electroshock therapy and eventually died basically an invalid. This was a man that spoke dozens of languages, was on the political circuit, was an amazing musician, was everything. And
how much did he take?
That much, that I don't know. But we are dealing with dosage. Like people say, oh, I'm going to take a tab today or whatever it is. The acid that they were dealing with back then was 20, 30 times stronger than what we are dealing with today.
Yeah, that's a lot. That's a lot to kind of have a permanent mental issue. That doesn't happen very often.
Yeah. Well, part of this is I don't know if there's different strands. I'm not going to go into different types of LSD or what you can use for that trip, but the LSD that was being used was developed by scientists that were brought over by Paperclip and by US scientists. The CIA was actively dosing soldiers in order to see what type of mental breaks they could create. They weren't doing it for the positive reasons like we talked about with psilocybin. It was overdosing in order to see if you could psychologically break somebody. And the reason why they were doing this was in order to actually control the culture, which seems different. And this is where it gets wild. So the theory goes that Timothy Leary was recruited by the CIA when he was working at Yale to have students come in and try LSD and then record the studies. So the CIA came, said, we'll give you an unlimited supply of LSD. Well, Yale didn't like it after about 2 years, and it's like, nah, you're messing up the kids. Like, students aren't doing that well. Let's move on. They let go of Leary, and he moves up to this house in upstate New York and basically creates this like acid estate house where he's calling in everybody who wants to come up and try acid. Well, this is on the East Coast. On the West Coast, this dude Ken Kesey, do you know him?
Kesey,
yeah, Kesey, sorry. Yeah. Have you heard, do you know his story at all?
Oh yeah. The electric Kool-Aid acid test.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and the merry pranksters.
And the beat poets.
Mm-hmm. Well, the acid, so anybody out there, so the merry pranksters and Ken Kesey was like a wrestler. He was basically like a straight-laced student, and he saw that there was a test or a study to take acid in a hospital. He went in, did the study, made some money. They asked him to come back. He came back, made some more money, took some more. They studied him. Then he was given a job at the hospital, like just a random, like cleaning up, like help out. And then was told by the hospital that he could just start taking acid from the hospital.
Nice.
Like, as much as he wanted, an unlimited amount. And so at this point, he's hooked. He's like, oh, this is the best thing ever. And he starts going around and distributing it to all his friends. And these are the first acid parties that happened in the 60s. Were all supplied by Cargill. Cargill, the big old pharmaceutical company. They were supplying all of the acid basically in the US. They were making all of this. Well, in 1966 was the true very first the acid test parties. And do you know the band that played?
Grateful Dead.
Yep. Do you know what they played, their name that they played under?
Merry Pranksters.
The Warlocks.
The Warlocks.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Yeah, that was their first name. And so the Grateful Dead played under the name of the Warlocks. And at those parties, that was the first time that they all dropped. So they were introduced to acid for the first time by this kid that was brought into a study that then was able to disseminate acid throughout wherever he went.
Nice. So Johnny Appleseed of LSD.
Uh-huh. Just walking around, just dosing up the leaves in the grass. Well, that's cool. That's fun. You're like, that's wild. Well, it gets a little bit like dark and twisted and messed up, because why was the government producing acid and then allowing it to just freely be given out to what was considered the counterculture movement? Any thoughts?
Oh, is that rhetorical?
No, that was a question.
Ask it one more time.
So the government was making LSD.
Yeah.
Cargill was making LSD, was legally allowed to supply it wherever they wanted. It was still controlled. It just wasn't, it was like decriminalized, but it was still a controlled substance. Was allowing a student who then dropped out of Stanford to walk into a hospital, grab as many vials as he could, and go and have these giant parties on the West Coast. On the East Coast, you have a debunked professor who got kicked out of a university because his money was coming from the government in order to fund his trials and his experiments, and then is somehow still has enough money to live on this estate while throwing these other elaborate giant parties where people were just going to go and trip balls.
Tripping out, man.
Mm-hmm. But why does the government want us to do that?
I don't know.
Yeah. Well, it goes back to propaganda and Mockingbird. It was all in order
so they could shut it down?
No, it was in order to create the idea that the countercultural movement, all the good things about it, were all druggies. Just the association. So hippies taking acid were against Vietnam War. No, they're not against the war. They're just druggies and we don't know what they're talking about. Civil rights movement. No, those students are just druggies. They don't know what they're talking about. And all of the good that was coming out of the 60s, the main thing that was coming out of the media at the time was, look at these drugged up hippies. Look at these, beatniks and deadbeats that are incapable of doing anything because they're all just strung out.
Absolutely. Well, they basically used that drugs as a weapon. LSD and LSD for the hippies and marijuana for black people.
Yep. Well, marijuana, I think, is a little bit different in a way that we've shown that there are a lot of positive health effects, and there's not too much negative with marijuana these days, just scientifically. The level and the amount of acid that people were dropping, the CIA knew chemically altered and changed their mentality.
Is that true? I was under the impression that there was no amount of LSD that could do that.
It would, at least for the time that you're high, chemically change you. And while you're high, you weren't productive. Yeah, and if your trips are lasting, if you're dosing every day for 2 years, you're not going to get anything done. So it was a way just to control the population and to have people not want to associate with say you were for civil rights or you were anti-Vietnam, but you didn't want to identify with, druggies. And so you couldn't say, hey, no, I'm against the war in Vietnam. Oh, why? Because you're a hippie and you just you go and drop acid every weekend. That was the culture that was created. That was the propaganda that was being put out.
Freaking Nixon, man.
Yeah. And why did I start out this history lesson? Well, it's because Vietnam is located where?
Asia.
In the Golden Triangle. It's where all the poppies were being grown.
Oh, it's crazy.
The CIA in the 50s was going into Laos and Cambodia and collecting the poppies, bringing them back and selling them on either the black market or selling them to pharmaceutical companies to create opioids. So you were having heroin being created. It wasn't a big thing yet. And then you had all the opium going to pharmaceutical companies to create medicine that they would then profit off of. All of this goes back to the opium trade that was created and funneled money into the 4 robber barons.
That's evil, man.
Yeah. You had the drug lord of, what was it? New Orleans, and I forget his name. When JFK was elected, he said one of his first things was going to be to shut down the drug trade in New Orleans. And the mob boss there said, all right, well, I'll take care of him. His territory stretched to Dallas. That's where JFK was shot. Just as a,
intrigue.
Yeah, just as a little.
There's no connection. There's no connection there, though.
Well, the JFK conspiracy, we can go down a whole different day. But this is where it gets wild with how the CIA was actively controlling the usage of LSD in culture and knew that it was going to affect people in a way that would benefit their involvement in Vietnam and their ability to pull opium and poppies from the Golden Triangle and bring it back to the US to sell. The Beatles, the first time that they were introduced to LSD, you know the story?
Remind me.
Yeah, so really easy. Harrison and Lennon went over to Harrison's dentist's house. The dentist said, all right, bring over your wives. The wives came over. The dentist drugged them all.
That's awesome.
All 4 of them. He dosed them without them knowing. The dentist was later found out to be an agent for MI5.
That's insane.
Yeah. Brian Jones.
The joke's on them, though, because it expanded all their minds and they got great music out of it.
Well, McCartney will straight up say that it wasn't acid. He did it once or twice. And there is a cool interview with Paul McCartney where he talks about it. And it was him being peer pressured when they were down in Laurel Canyon, which was like where all the acid test parties were going on, like where Peter Fonda and Morrison and, Crosby's and all those guys were hanging out. And it was just under pressure. He was like, yeah, that was the first time I did it. And then they did it once at a retreat, but it wasn't like they were dropping it all of the time. He was like, I've done it twice. And okay, but why did MI5 want to dose them in the first place?
Why?
Oh, just because then they were able to it was Mick Jagger who got caught with weed charges, and they held that over his head for years and years and years. Same thing happened with the Stones. What was it? Hendrix was another one. Joplin was another one. The first time that they both did acid, they were both dosed. Right? It's crazy. It's not like a
nice.
It's ridiculous that the CIA purposely created a drug the CIA created a drug with Nazi scientists using funds from the wealthiest, white Saxon Americans that were, old school tied to eugenics programs and the opium trade in order to suppress and to keep a generation silent. That was the main reason why LSD was used so much, was that the government allowed it to be put out just to keep a generation silent.
It's wild. That's crazy.
Mm-hmm. It's nuts.
Bitches, man.
Yeah, and that's about a third of the book. The book is crazy, just so you know.
What's the book called?
It's called Drugs as Weapons Against Us. Yeah.
Okay.
By John Potash. Potash.
Let me write that down.
There's also a really great documentary as well on Prime.
Oh,
yeah.
I like the sound of that.
Yeah.
I'll jump on that too.
That's the way to go.
Yeah.
But so going all the way back to Timothy Leary. Timothy Leary was arrested in 1970 when he came out and said that LSD was bad. He actually came out and was like, you shouldn't be doing this. It's making you numb. Hallucinogenics make you feel connected, but the overuses of them just make you numb. And they were being used by so many people so heavily that it really silenced part of the generation. That instead of, there were these huge protests, there were these huge marches, but a lot of those marches, there were people that were trying to, break into these subgroups just to get people hooked on LSD. There were multiple cases of school groups like the Students for a Democratic Society. Awesome little sober group that was they opposed LSD. They wanted basically just civil rights and to pull out of Vietnam. Well, slowly but surely, CIA guy snuck into the organization, convinced them all to do acid, split up the group because the one part just was like, no, this is crazy. Why did we do this? The other part then turned, and this organization that was like 100,000 students strong just splintered.
Wow. They're using the wrong drug. They should have used opium.
Yeah, but opium was known to be bad. You saw the effects of China. You needed something new.
Oh, good point.
Like you knew that, okay, opium's going to slow you down. But if you have all of your idols, if you have the Beatles seeming like, it's like, yeah, we took LSD, but they're like, we've took it once or twice. If you have, Peter Fonda, if you have Jim Morrison, if you have the Stones, if you have Hendrix, Joplin, all of these, the icons of the 60s, all were known users, then you go, hey, I want to be cool. I want to be like them. And that's how that was the propaganda that they put out. it wasn't about the potential good that LSD could do. It was the overuse of something. It's just, you can smoke too much weed. You can, definitely drink too much. You can always overindulge. And that's what they were trying to get people to do.
Which is weird because that's not the type of thing to abuse. I feel like a lot of people would just be like, I can't do that again for months.
You would go to a party and there were like acid Kool-Aid tests,
Yeah.
Straight in there. You'd have a cup and that's just what happened. And then if that's your social scene though, if it's, what are we doing this weekend? Oh, we're going to go to this. It's like, it's just wild. It's a crazy little rabbit hole to go down.
It is crazy.
Yeah.
Fucking government, man.
Get into like the weather underground and bombings and how that was all created. But
yeah,
I think it was Timothy Leary's biggest quote that stuck out to me is freedom through drugs is an illusion. And that was the message more not maybe spiritual freedom, but just actual freedom, like freedom to go and have your voice heard, to get troops out of Vietnam, to have civil rights, to have an equal culture. If we're under the influence of something, then we're not going to be capable of being sober enough to realize that shit's happening. It's a drug. You're going to numb the pain at some point, or you're going to have a really bad trip and then you're just going to freak out and not even want to deal with the world.
That's a wild time in history, man. It really is. I can't believe they did that. Yeah.
And it was all for opium money, man. And now we're dealing with the opium crisis of today, the opioid crisis. All of this goes back to four wealthy families. Really started with one, but then four wealthy families creating all of the propaganda in the U.S. in order just to allow opium to be cultivated.
Freaking industrial revolution, man. Creating all these bullshit concepts like a work day or a work week or a credit score.
Yeah, mine's terrible.
Or a minimum wage. It's all bullshit, man. It's all bullshit. We'll have to talk about the fourth industrial revolution on another one, on another podcast.
And then, I'm just going to keep on. I won't jump into the next part, but there'll be a second part of this at some point in the future.
We'll do a part two.
Yeah. But, dude, I didn't even talk about Walt Disney. There's so much.
Walt Disney?
Yeah. Just this crazy little fake Hollywood studio that was created in order to put out all these propaganda films. It was fun.
Good times.
It was good. It was good.
Gotta love propaganda studios.
Yeah. Well, that was my little rant and lecture for today.
Good times, man. It's a weird world out there.
Any final thoughts? Oh, I'll end on this. And then I'll let you can have the last word. You want to know what the first version of the eugenics record office was called?
Hitler's house.
Oh, it's just silly. American Breeders Association.
Oh my God. Yeah, go pick up a golden retriever.
Yep.
Oh my God, that's hilarious.
Yeah.
That's ridiculous. Oh man. My final thoughts are: think for yourself. Wake up. Don't trust the government. All right.
If we weren't on this, if the CIA wasn't listening before, now we're definitely being recorded. I just said way too many operations.
I hope our CIA agent is nice.
Yeah.
And I hope his name is Raymond.
Raymond. Okay.
Yeah.
We can just call him Ray. Yeah. What's up, Ray?
Yeah.
Did you like the podcast today?
What's up, Ray?
There we go. Hey, Ray, did you like the podcast?
Ray loved the podcast. All right, dude. Well, that was wild, man. That was a trip.
But yeah, well, dude, love you, man. And we'll be in touch. World, peace.